It's a good day to go bouldering, isn't it? You can sign the waiver, pack your stuff away, put on some climbing shoes, and we'll do a quick induction before you get on the wall, if it's your first time here. Good day, I'm Mars Liquor, and welcome to December 2024 Bouldering. This month, I became a temporary staff member at Up Climbing. I also did a bunch of bouldering again, but that's not special because that's what always gets featured in these videos. Working at the gym was the highlight for this month. On the 3rd, I was quite washed again, like the 30th of November. I'm guessing the fatigue from that day carried over to this one. I didn't pick up my journal on this day, but I do have some notes in my script document. This day was a Tuesday, so there was a new set on the cave wall. Some of the problems were rather short from what I remember because I actually don't remember that being the case. I didn't climb for very long. I stopped climbing after only an hour and I crashed by the Decoy Board mat before heading home. I thought I might be burned out. I was doing some fitness post-testing at school that day and I did pretty bad, so that kind of foreshadowed how well I would climb later that day. I have nothing else to say, so that's all for the 3rd. On the 5th, I actually did more fitness post-testing at school, and I performed so much better, which pretty much meant I did better at the climbing gym today. I rode about 2 climbs. The first climb was a blue one with blue holds. I thought it was a grade 4, but I also thought it might be a grade 5 because it felt like it. Being in the cave is quite a powerful climb. Most of the holds are pretty good and juggy. This recording was my last attempt on this for the day. The start is alright, the hands are great, but I think the footholds are a bit janky as they're on a slightly weird angle and have a really strong edge. My favourite move is definitely the one where I have both of my hands on the massive jug things and then I swing my legs to step on the rightmost foothold. It feels really cool. Though after that move, I didn't really know what to do. I knew I had to grab the next hold, obviously, but I wasn't sure whether there was a way to do it statically. I tried to find a spot to place my other foot, but to no avail. I moved on to another climb after this. The next climb I wrote about was a grade 4 black slab to the left of the turn. In my journal, I wasn't really sure how to describe it, but I would add coordination in place of technical. By this recording, I already knew what to do. I just could not do a certain move because 1, it was kind of scary, and 2, for some reason I just suck at doing dynamic moves where I have to go for a hold with both hands. I tried doing it more statically by putting my foot on top of the starting hold, and then I hoped I could slowly reach over to the hold by the left of the big purple one. The hold was just too far though, and I had to do it dynamically. After around my 8th attempt, I lost count, but the only progress I made after that recording was grabbing that hold for a bit, and I did it with my right hand instead of the left. I was really bad at that one, and I went home after that attempt, and that's all for the 5th. On the 7th, I went with a friend, and I barely know what we did on this day. The second wave of the cave set was up, so we definitely looked at that because the first climb I wrote about was a climb on the cave. It was graded though, so I think I was just showing it off to him, and then maybe I thought I could work on it. I don't know if I did work on it because I wrote nothing of the climb after that. It is a really stupid climb though. It seems really simple because of the grade and the number of holds, which is not very much. The entire climb is basically just like 6 holds, and 3 of which are the main grabby ones that are very hard to grab onto because you basically can't swing on them. I've seen a couple of people campus this climb, and I always wonder how in the world that's possible. I later found out at the end of the month. I have no idea what we did other than that though in this session, and that's all for the 7th. On the 10th, I had a look at the new island set, and I basically wrote down a review on it. I think I was going to take photos of all the new problems and put down my guess for the grade, but I definitely forgot to do that, as I do with many things. I thought it was a pretty fun set, mostly with the easy climbs I could do though. I do remember one of the really easy climbs being something that was really easy to campus because the top hold was just 3 holds up from the start. But it still felt pretty cool to do. There was this one purple problem with some fat volume-like holds at the start. I thought that one was really easy and graded a 3 at most, but it was somehow a grade 4. I don't have any photos to show of these climbs, so this is basically just yap. This was the week before I would start my work experience, so I'll try to talk to some more of the staff and learn names before I get started. But I was only really talking to Bayer the whole time. And there was this one conversation we had where I was trying to prove that I knew this one guy named Michael, but I actually got the name wrong and it turned out to just be a funny moment kind of thing. I don't even know if that happened on this day, but it was somewhere around this time. And I'll just drop staff names because they're already kind of public. And that's all for the 10th. On the 12th, I think I tried projecting a problem and my choice was a grade 4 blue on the far left side of the cave. I was able to successfully make the thought of getting my phone so I could record and see how I'm actually doing in the wall. And it helps really well with having something to put in this video. For some reason, it took me way too long to figure out what I was supposed to read in my journal. I was actually looking at the thing for the next day. It's not even about a climb in the cave. I don't know how I didn't process that. But this clip was my 7th attempt for the day, and it was probably the last because the notes I wrote for this attempt was that I was tired and that's it. I wrote nothing after that. But I would usually write whether I topped it or not with an attempt number beside it. I've already described this climb before, and I still liked climbing on it because of that one move. But the one after that still stumped me. I just could not figure out which hold to go to next and how I would approach it. That's why I skipped ahead for the start of this attempt. I was thinking of how I could get to either of the next holds. It is possible to get to the hold on the right. I have seen someone do it, but it just looks really weird. The attempt was pretty short, but I think I could have made it if I tried just a little bit more. I would also try to do the climb by going for the hold on the left, but I don't think I did that on this day. I don't know what else I could have done on this day. I definitely did not go on the decoy board. School was wrapping up at around this time, so I don't think I did anything cool there. And that's all for the 12th. On the 14th, I went to my own again and I forgot to use my phone again. I worked on one problem and I don't remember what I did before writing about the climb I wrote about, except warming up obviously. I definitely would have looked at the second wave of the new set though. The climb was definitely not part of that wave. I didn't use my phone on this day, but I do have a photo of the problem from the 26th. I saw some people having a go at this on the 2 days before, like 2 previous sessions, and now I thought this day was a good day to have my go at it. It's a black grade 4, and I would say it's juggy, though you do have to grab more volumes than actual holds. The volumes are pretty good though, but positioning the feet was probably the most difficult part because there weren't many great footholds, especially when I had to grab the last few. When grabbing the right hold near the top one, I'd have to put my right foot on top of the volume, but it was never great because the volume was on a slightly off angle, and then I had to find a spot for the left foot. Next, I would grab the hold on the left, which was an undercling, and I think my feet were good where they were, but the thing I struggled with the most was grabbing the top hold because it was small, and as a result of that, I was scared to even get a hand up there because it was a long drop. It happened a few times where I was one move away from the top hold, but I couldn't make it. I kind of gave up on it, and then I went to Albert Park to watch some games of Ultimate Frisbee. And that's all for the 14th. On the 16th, I started my work experience at up climbing, and I got to work right as soon as I arrived. Since it was somewhat early in the morning and there weren't many people at the gym, I started off with vacuuming the mats. They had one of those backpack vacuums with batteries that go on the side of it, and they look a bit like ones that go on a drill. They was a bit big, so it would be a big drill. I think I cleaned up the shoe cubbies next, which took a really long time, but it was easy. I was also shown how to use the coffee machine, and I made some basic drinks as requested by some of the staff. I then had a look at the setters test their new set on the right side of the workshop, where they made some coordination problems, which was also kind of like a circuit. So there was this other game where you could see how many times you can go back and forth on the wall in one run. On the opposite end of the wall was a spray wall dedicated to Katara, one of the root setters, because he was going away for a bit. And it's actually still there as of January. The simple idea of Katara's home gym, which is the name of the wall, is that it's supposed to be something like Katara's wall at home. I'm not entirely sure, but that's what it says on Instagram, and I actually learned all that information from that post. I probably should have gotten it earlier when I realized one of the setters was named Katara. I wasn't really talking much because there was a lot going on. I was meeting a new group of people which I've probably only seen about once or twice before, since I don't go bouldering on Mondays and Fridays. I was watching them climb on a new set which looked pretty interesting, and it was just crazy that I was there with the setters. Even though they're not famous or anything, they make all the problems around the gym which I climb. After I was finished watching the setters do their thing, I think I would just make a start checking in customers and maybe making more drinks, and watching the experts do some inductions because I wanted to have a crack at that. It was actually one of the main things I wanted to do. At some point, and I don't remember when it was on this day, but Dale, the owner, took me back around behind the back wall to show me some metal work that he was doing, because he was going to mount a ceiling fan around the middle area. It was pretty cool. There was a whole workshop set up around the back, which I thought that was cooler than whatever he was doing. And then on the 17th, I was back to work, and this day was a lot better. I would probably say it was probably one of my favorite days of the entire week. Though it was short-lived because I had to leave early in order to attend a job interview. I did start off with cleaning the pigeonholes where people would put away their stuff before the start of their session, and that was pretty easy. Then after that, I would go through the entire gym to take down some rubber marks with a really strong brush. Some marks were just impossible for a reason I do not know, but if I couldn't do it, I'd just move on. Later, I cleaned some rental shoes, but that was pretty simple and I have nothing else to say about it. But after and in between those housekeeping chores or tasks, I was serving customers and doing inductions. Oh yeah. It was also pretty eventful on this day, as surprisingly, a lot of people were coming in and I was starting to feel really comfortable where I was. I remember this one time where there were these two girls around my age, and they were going to sign the waiver, but realized that they needed a guardian to sign it for them. So they were just asking all of us at the desk if we could be their guardian. It was kind of funny. They then left saying that they'll come back another day, but I don't think they ever did. Also, way later, I realized that they could have just called their parents or something, because the premise of the waiver is that the parents or guardians just need to know what's going on, and then the kids could just sign the waivers themselves. When the girls left, Nico asked if I scared them off. Some friends and regulars saw me working, so that was a thing. And finally, about the inductions. My first inductions weren't the greatest because I forgot a bunch of things, and I also realized, as Bale told me, that no one should be going into the training room before the induction in case that they do something that they shouldn't do. I was a bit confused at first because when I came to the gym for the first time, I was allowed to go to the training room, and I did that. But I did forget that there was only a stretching mat when I was there for the first time, and now there's a whole training set up with weights and everything, like dumbbells and other weights and rules. But yeah, and like I said before, I had to end my shift a bit early to have a job interview, and that's all for the 17th and the 16th. I forgot to say that. On the 18th, I was back to work again, and this time I started my shift a bit later so I could see the gym at its peak, which is usually around 7 or 6 p.m. because most people would have finished work by then. I don't remember anything special happening. I basically just did all the things I'd been doing on the day before, except the only difference being that it was later because I arrived later. My inductions were starting to get better, and I was getting into the groove of everything. James made some hot chips, which I finished because they got cold, and they're still pretty good cold. I got a photo of a long one, which looked like a fat monobrow. I did forget about bringing up the loyalty point system the whole time because I don't use it myself. The gym was kind of dead for most of the day until around the time I clocked off. And something, after clocking off at around 6:10 p.m., I did some bouldering, and it was kind of sloppy bouldering. I didn't warm up because I wasn't going to be there for a very long time since I needed to get home and have dinner, and also sleep early because I was going to start at 9 the next day. I had a quick look at the new set since I hadn't had a chance to properly climb on it yet. I was on the right side of the workshop with the coordination climbs, and I was able to do one of them in one direction, and then that was it. I didn't stay on that wall for very long because the rubber in my shoes were actually starting to come off at the front where I step on, and I thought doing extremely dynamic climbs like that one would tear some off and make it worse. I then went to the island to do some really easy climbing because I didn't warm up, so I wasn't feeling like I'd perform really well. But I don't think there were many problems to climb on because I think I already did most of them, except for the south side. I left the gym 20 minutes after clocking out. It felt really alien to be bouldering around some of the people I just served from behind the counter, like not long ago. It just didn't feel right for some reason. I also didn't have the uniform, so there wasn't any physical change that would transition me from employee to customer. That was another reason why I didn't climb for very long. And that's all for the 18th. On the 19th, I worked a bit later again. I basically worked full-time hours this time. This was probably one of the more boring days because not many people came in until past lunch or something. And even still, there weren't that many people. It was quite hot, so that could have been the reason why it was a bit empty. It basically just meant less work for me. Dale did bring in an A-frame with some chalk, and he wanted us to make a thing on it that would show their deal on iced lattes since it was quite hot. I tried my best at whipping up something I liked, but I wasn't very good at making text look cool. Normally when I do something like that on, say, Google Slides or an image software, like the one I use for my thumbnails, I just let fonts do the work and making the letters look cool. I did make some decorations such as some climbing holds and the up logo on the top corner so people would know who they're buying from or who they're seeing the advertising from. I liked how it turned out in the end, but my writing was very bare bones compared to the rest of the promotion art thing. That A-frame thing was probably the most eventful thing of the day. The rest of my time on that day was spent vacuuming the mats and other places around the gym. I mopped the floor of the training room, and I probably cleaned up some rental shoes. I remember nothing else from that day. I clocked off at 5 p.m, and that's all for the 19th. The 20th was the same, as in it was quite uneventful again because there weren't many customers again. It may have been stupid hot again, but I don't know if that's actually true. We did more stuff on the A-frame, showed off another sale, but I think it may have been the same thing because not many picked up the deal on the iced lattes the day before. I have nothing else to say about this day. I don't remember doing much. I had to leave early at around 1:45 for an appointment, which was a bit annoying. I was with Richard before I left, and I had a good record with not calling him Michael. But then that streak was broken when I said goodbye to him. We were both like, oh no. I actually really liked working there though. If I was offered a more permanent position, even if it's casual, I would take it in a heartbeat. I love being there. Every person I worked with was pretty cool, and I would say I wish I tried to learn a bit more about each person. I don't think I learned much about Richard, and also each of the setters. I also probably should have asked for a uniform because I definitely confused a bunch of people, especially during inductions or other times when I wasn't behind the counter. And the regret next to that was getting photo documentation of my work experience because it's a pretty cool thing to look back on. But I have this and my journals, so that'll do. That's all for the 20th and the end of my work experience. On the 23rd, I was back climbing at where I used to work for a week. Even though it had only been a few days since work experience was over, I adjusted back into being a customer quite quickly, unlike the 18th where it felt really weird. I spent a lot of time around the workshop since I didn't properly look at it, and there was a second wave of climbs anyway. I did all the new problems on Katara's home gym. They were all green grade problems. The wave before that was stupid hard. The one I do in this clip is also a new one, and I topped it before recording this clip. I thought I could try top it again and record it so I could show it off in this video. I did a bad job at topping it again though. I actually struggled to do it. I have no idea how I topped it after only 3 attempts. Even though I thought it was easy enough to be graded a 4. I did a stupid amount of thinking on this problem though, so it was probably that. My hands would just pop off at the end, and that was pretty annoying. After falling off, I moved on to the south side of the island to try out some of those problems, and I only worked on the orange one because the first move was kinda difficult and I just wanted to top this problem. It's a simple climb after the first move because it's just following a bunch of jugs and that's it. Some people have been able to hook their toe on the starting hold when moving on to the next hold, but I just swapped my feet at the volume to make the move work. I topped it after a decent amount of attempts. The next and final climb I read about was the grade 4 blue in the cave, which I tried doing on the 12th and other days. I actually did this one before the orange one on the island, but it doesn't matter. I was easily able to get back to the spot where I would fall before. I don't know why. I think I was just freshened up for not doing it for a week. I actually topped on my second attempt, but it felt kinda nasty because I just took the beta from someone else. What they did was extremely simple though. After grabbing onto the hold at the volume, you can just twist your right leg to place the knee on the massive jug thing before going for the match at the top hold. And that's it. After all those climbs, I went to the Decoy Board for a bit to have a look at some climbs people have set. And I was mainly working on one problem by Liana called Lemons. It's graded a 4B or V0, and the climb is definitely like so. I would grade it down to a 4A if the ending wasn't so annoying. That was the only part I really remembered. I didn't top it, and I did over 14 attempts before going home. The back wall was getting reset, and it did open up while I was at the Decoy Board, but I wanted to try out those climbs later. And that's all for the 23rd. On the 26th, I went bouldering and up climbing again, and I looked at the new set on the back wall. I flashed a decent amount of the easier climbs, but they were easy ones, so that's not special. The first climb I wrote about was this black slab, which I thought was graded a 3 because of how I did it. I'm pretty sure there are other ways to do it because I saw this one guy go underneath the volume to then either mantle on top of that or on top of the long black hold all the way to the right. I didn't watch his entire climb though. I did it the proper slab way, I guess. And though it is kind of scary because the feet get pretty close together and you have to move slowly, it works. I topped it after 3 attempts, and this recording is actually way after I topped the problem. Moving on to the next problem, and it was actually a problem. I topped this white climb before this recording, but I really struggled to top it again when I tried to get a record of it. I topped it well after a reasonable amount of attempts, and I thought it was a grade 4. I knew all the moves from the start. and there wasn't anything too difficult that would make replicating this hard. But for some reason I was having trouble with the crimps up top, and it irritated me a bit because I would just rush in my other recordings. This clip is the best of those recordings. It felt like a really good climb after topping it the first time though. After moving on from that white slab, I saw some friends trying to top a problem on the island, and they asked me for help. It was the black one on the west side of the island again, and I hadn't topped it before, but I got very close to topping it before, so I was able to give beta. I thought I did a bad job at explaining my beta, but I think they at least got to where I was. I actually don't know. But that's all for the 26th. On the 28th, I was only in the gym for around an hour because I would have to meet up with some friends later and go swimming. Because I had such little time, I chose to skip the warm-up, and I also didn't use my journal. But I did get to hang out with some nice guys, one of which I actually remember the name of and served during my work experience. This day is actually recent enough for this to be entirely from my memory. This day was a Saturday, so the second wave of the new set was out, and we spent a lot of our time around there doing some of the new climbs and showing them my beta on the problems I had already done. There was this one white problem which would later be graded as a wild card, and it was the weirdest problem I had ever seen. It was pretty short and looked quite simple, but the last move was the hardest because you had to find a way to match the top hold after pressing on it with one hand. It was a really weird problem. I haven't actually seen anyone figure out that last move. Moving on, we later went to the cave to climb there as you would. At the cave there was this white problem graded a 3, and I couldn't really understand how I was finally able to top it. It was the last session where I would climb on the cave before I got reset, and I could finally top the white grade 3 that probably should not have been a grade 3. The slopers after the pinch hold were actually not as bad as I thought. I remember seeing people campers that climb, and I'd always be like, how? But when I started the climb from that point, it made sense. It took a while to top it from the start, and I had to use chalk to help me stick to the sloper when I tried to grab it with one hand. After a few more climbs after that, I had to leave to meet up with my friends. The two guys I was with the entire time were lovely though, and we had some pretty good conversations. And that's all for the 28th. On New Year's Eve, the 31st of December, I went bouldering instead of having plans with my friends. We were going to have a sleepover, but it didn't happen. I have nothing to show for this day apart from my warm-up and a photo of the decoy board. It was a Tuesday, so there was a new set at the cave. I barely looked at it though. I did some climbs, but were not many before moving on to the beloved decoy board for the final time this year. I did a bunch of sets on the decoy board, and most of them I topped. I topped Lemons by Liana after my first attempt of the day, though I can't say I flashed it because I did 15 attempts before this one. I did flash another climb set by Liana, and then I flashed another one by another person called Colnam04 before getting stuck on a stupid hard problem by Bry Audio called Warm Lavender Tea. In the app, the grade is shown to be a 4B or V0, but it feels so much harder than that. Some people have thought it's at least a 4C or 5A, but there are also some people out there who thought it was a grade 4A, which is actually mad. The hardest move is definitely the first because it's just stupid. I don't even know how to describe it. I moved on after a decent amount of attempts because I found it was too hard for me. There was another climb I did, but unlike Warm Lavender Tea, I don't even know what to do for the first move. I went home after climbing the decoy board, and that's all for the 31st. Writing the script was so hard because I did it right after writing November's video, so I never really had a break from writing until I finished the script for this one. This month was also a pretty long month, just like November, but I got to work it up climbing for a week, and that definitely made my month. I'm not worried about any climbing goals at the moment in the new year because I just want to worry about doing well in school. I don't know where this is going to go. But that's the end of December 2024 bouldering. Goodbye.